12 hours. That's a pretty insignificant amount of time in our lives. We humans, on average, stay awake for around 16 to 18 hours a day. However, a lot can be done in 12 hours. In that short time, you could watch the entire Lord of the Rings trilogy. You could stare at one of those 10-hour YouTube videos of paint drying. You could even beat Minecraft under that time, even without cheating. Unfortunately, 12 hours seems to also be all the time you need to ruin someone's internet career. And thus is the story of Bluskys, a prolific geometry-level designer, but most well known for his role as a graphics designer for the famous Verse Bob and Bosip Friday Night Funkin' mod. Blue, as I will be referring to him from now on, made himself out to be a very wholesome blue bird, who even came out in defense of his friend Amor during that controversy in late December of 2021. So for the most part, Blue is known as a very calm, collected, and civil person. But all of this changed on March the 13th, 2022, when this Google document was posted and made rounds around Twitter. This document was created and shared by Seebo, who is most well known as being the voice actor of Bosip in the Bob and Bosip mod, and could therefore be considered a work colleague of Blue. 8.5 hours later, Blue would then post his response to Seebo in the form of his own Google document. But what exactly was all of this drama about? Well, let's delve into this. I'd like to preface at the very beginning of this video that I don't believe anyone should be cancelled because of this. Both people in this controversy have stated that they aren't out to ruin each other's reputations, so please be mindful of that. This obviously means no harassment should be levied against anyone mentioned in this video. I'm serious with this. A lot of the evidence here is very circumstantial and therefore easy to fake, so don't be one of those people who take screenshots at face value and use them as a reason to send death threats. With that being said, let's look at the Bluskys controversy and how the guy who helped Amor through drama was forced into drama himself. The structure of this segment of the video will be as follows. I will present Seebo's accusation against Blue, and then I will present Blue's response to the accusation. I will try to be as objective as possible, but I may still project some opinions into this where I see fit. I will be pointing out some issues in both of these people's arguments, but I'm not forcing you guys to agree with me either way. Anyway, let's begin. Firstly, Seebo brings up the Amor controversy, specifically the part involving Bluskys, which was, if you don't remember, about how Amor had made Rule 34 art featuring Blue and Mini Shui, the latter of whom was underage at the time. Seebo explains that Blue was a participant in illegal activity, since Mini was a minor, but Blue managed to twist it to seem like it was a simple mistake and got off scot-free. Seebo also provides some proof as to what the definition of CP extends to, and based on this website about US federal law, the NSFW art of Mini seems to fall under the definition of sexually explicit imagery of a minor. Blue, concerningly, does not rebuke the allegations of holding CP, and instead responds to this statement by talking about the handling of the Amor situation. Blue then goes on to provide examples of how heavily he was affected by the situation, from taking a week-long hiatus, discussing and profusely apologizing to Mini, and having many friends cut ties with him. And, to be completely honest, if you read Blue's document about the Amor drama, his position does make some sense. He admits wholly to being wrong, apologizes a lot, and says that he understands if people want to separate themselves from him. There doesn't seem to be much twisting information or getting off scot-free as Seebo claims. But then again, it is just one person's word against another person's, so you can't make a valid judgment either way. Except for, the CP thing, which is quite bad. Moving on. Seebo then continues by showing this image here, which is a thread of Discord DMs in which Blue sends Seebo a screenshot of his folder of nudes, which contains almost 11 gigabytes worth of files. Seebo uses this to contradict Blue's statement that he had kept the Amor NSFW art in a folder hidden away in my library and forgot about it entirely until the events of the Amor drama. Seebo claims the image proves that Blue consistently maintained his nudes folder, meaning that there was no way he could have forgotten about the Amor NSFW art if he continually accessed the folder. Blue counters Seebo's accusation by stating, first of all, that Seebo is taking his statements out of context, which I'm not exactly sure is the case, because I don't really understand what point Blue is trying to make here. Anyway, Blue's next statement is... Blue admits that he's a major porn addict and impulsively saved basically every sexual image he comes across, but adds that all of the files are illegal. He says all of this so he can explain that he had put the Amor NSFW art into a folder inside of his nudes folder, but then deleted all of the art that involved Minnie. Blue claims that when Kolsan came out with the NSFW art during the Amor drama, it was the first time he had remembered them since their creation. Blue's argument is also supported by his original Google Doc about the Amor drama, which reaffirms the idea that he had deliberately tried to push the art out of his mind. However, there is no evidence to support Blue's point, so it's just his own word. In his next point, Seebo claims that he received information that several known minors were following Blue's NSFW Twitter account. Seebo says that this contradicts what Blue said in his first document. Seebo says Blue stated that he was apologetic for allowing Minnie to follow his NSFW alt and it would not happen again, but that was clearly not the case. Blue rebuts this by claiming that it was an accident and that he had never meant for minors to follow his NSFW alt. There was a short period of time in which his alt was accidentally made public, and 3 of the minors who followed him had lied about their ages. In a follower purge in late January 2022, Blue removed all of the minors from his alt. Once again, and in a very noticeable pattern, Blue provides no evidence to support his claims, and instead relies on his own testimonies to defend himself. While this could be because he couldn't have obtained evidence during the time, it is still a cause for suspicion. Seebo then goes on to attack Blue for interacting sexually with minors. Seebo provides examples of some horny talk between the two of them. In these DMs, you can clearly see Blue and Seebo engaging in some very odd conversations, with the final image showing a bulge shot that Blue sent to Seebo. It is very important to note that, during these DMs, Seebo was extremely drunk despite being underage. However, please note that it is perfectly legal for Seebo to drink in his home state of Washington as long as he has parental permission, which he claims he does. Seebo explains that he is okay with relationships between 17 and 18-year-olds, which were the ages of Seebo and Blue respectively. However, his issue with the situation is that Blue had sexual conversations with someone who was clearly drunk and was therefore in no right mind to make rational decisions. Seebo also claims that Blue was the one who started the sex talk, which, to be fair, isn't true if you look at the screenshots. Anyway, in Blue's response, he puts particular emphasis on explaining the fact that Seebo was a heavy drinker and would constantly shout profanities and horny talk with other people in voice chats while intoxicated, but when told to chill out, he would get angry and leave the calls. Blue then expresses regret for not having told Seebo to stop with the weird conversation, though honestly, I'm not really sure if I should believe that. Blue then shows screenshots of Seebo admitting to being of the age of consent, and that Seebo even said himself that he was fine with 1-year age gaps. The issue is that Blue doesn't address the key issue here. Blue seems to think that if he can prove Seebo was above the age of consent and willing to engage in sexual conversations, then everything was fine and dandy. But the real problem is that Seebo was drunk, and therefore not thinking straight. So it's definitely immoral on Blue's part to have engaged in sexual conversations with Seebo. Seebo then goes on to explain that he learned, from anonymous sources, that Blue was engaging in sexual activity with people on his NSFW Twitter alt, and Seebo claims to have confirmed that Blue was sending and receiving nudes from minors for an extended period of time. Seebo does not seem to have any sources to support this accusation, but given the serious nature of the allegations and the seeming sincerity of Seebo throughout this, I'm personally inclined to believe him. In response to this allegation, Blue linked a few Twitter posts he made on his alt, which supposedly disproved the notion that he has CP on his computer. The first tweet shows him scrolling through his folder of NSFW media, The second tweet is a video showing that the folder hasn't been edited since November 2021 to show that he didn't just go and delete the nudes when SIBO exposed him. And the third tweet is an image proving that this folder is the same folder shown by SIBO in his document. While this proves that there was no CP in the NSFW folder, it does not directly disprove the idea that Blue had CP. Also, there is a major contradiction in the third tweet here, which is the folder size. In SIBO's screenshot, you can see that there is 10.6 gigabytes of files in the folder, but in Blue's image, there is now only 2.88 gigabytes. This indicates that there was a mass purging or migration of files from that folder, which makes it entirely possible that at some point in time, Blue may have had CP in that folder, and it may have been deleted or moved elsewhere during November of 2021. I'm not saying this is definitive proof, but it is suspicious. Anyway, SIBO continues by presenting evidence of Blue requesting for a sexual video from an alleged 15-year-old. And yeah, this is pretty gross. Blue responds to this allegation in his own document by stating that that person was later exposed for lying about their age by claiming to be over 18. Blue also says that he doesn't follow the person in question anymore and can't even find the post they made. I'm honestly not sure what Blue is trying to prove by searching the phrase on Twitter. It's entirely reasonable for the person to have wanted to delete the post after receiving that weird response from Blue. SIBO then presents evidence which suggests that Blue's alt account, Evening Coffee, was initially supposed to be used to interact with minor NSFW accounts. SIBO uses these two screenshots to show that Blue had been liking posts from a user who outright stated in their bio that they were 16 and did not want interactions from anyone over 18. Blue claims that he didn't realize that that person was underage until 4 days later, at which time he blocked and unfollowed them. His defense for liking tweets from MNSFW users is that at the time, he was spam liking any NSFW tweet he came across. His evidence is very flimsy on this front though, just that you can see that he liked a tweet by the MNSFW account, then 2 tweets from 18 plus accounts, and then another tweet from that MNSFW account again. There is a very minor point SIBO makes here, which is that he had heard from an anonymous source that Blue had confessed to have been into lolly porn as of roughly 9 months ago. This is actually kind of serious, because lolly is actually illegal in America, or at the very least illegal in many states and a legal grey area in others. One must remember that this is just SIBO's word, as he doesn't provide any substantial evidence to support this claim. However, suspiciously, Blue does not argue against this serious accusation. In this next section, SIBO moves on to talk about Blue's history of manipulative behavior. His first point is about Blue's presence in the Geometry Dash community. SIBO explains that Blue was constantly obsessed with getting into elite private Geometry Dash Discord servers, befriending popular creators, and was just getting more and more fame in the community in general. SIBO states that Blue has consistently befriended people over the years or flirted with them for his own gain, whether it be personal or for clout. And what always happens once they aren't useful to him anymore or are more trouble than they're worth is that they get thrown by the wayside, usually after some bad treatment. What's a little concerning is that SIBO doesn't provide any evidence of this, which is odd since up until now he's been pretty upfront with screenshots for a lot of his other more substantial allegations. In this section, he mainly relies on testimonies from unnamed people who allegedly knew Blue. I'm not saying that SIBO is lying here, I'm just saying that this point is less convincing than many of the other ones due to aforementioned lack of evidence. Blue's response isn't that much to see either. He simply denies the allegations and claims to actually have had good intentions when it came to befriending people. On this front, it's a whole argument of testimonies with no substantial proof of anything, so let's move on. SIBO goes on to explain that Blue has displayed a pattern of deflecting and downplaying his own wrongdoings. The example SIBO provides is Blue allegedly stealing art from animations and using them in his own Geometry Dash levels, calling them inspiration. SIBO provides links to show a connection between a Japanese music video, CSQN, and one of Blue's Geometry Dash levels, which goes by the same name. In my personal opinion, I don't really see a problem in this example. It's very clear that Blue properly acknowledged his source material. I mean, the titles are literally the same. And the person who showcased the level, Nexus, even acknowledged the fact that the level design is a recreation of the music video. Blue's response to SIBO's point is just reaffirming the notion that it really was just inspiration, before going on to say that Sibo was just trying to bring up petty old dramas to use to call him a manipulative clout chaser, which is a pretty bad take, since Sibo already explained his intentions of bringing up past drama in his document. Sibo then talks about another old Geometry Dash drama involving a groomer named Krazen, who was exposed in the community. One of the grooming victims, ND, made a joke aimed at Krazen, which Sibo interpreted to be a trauma coping mechanism. After this event, Blue made this tweet, expressing his disappointment that people responsible for cancelling someone were being immature and used the situation to farm likes and retweet. This post was clearly directed at ND, who was also one of the people who exposed Krazen in the first place. In Blue's response document, however, Blue shows a tweet he posted 3 days later, in which he apologized profusely to ND. The final point Sibo makes in his Google document is that, while Blue may seem like a really wholesome person on the outside, it's actually just a carefully crafted persona designed to help him get as much attention and support as possible. Sibo backs up his claim by presenting a screenshot to support his view that Blue's true nature is a rude and inconsiderate manipulator. The context of this screenshot is that Sibo was playing a game in a Discord voice chat with a few other people, including Blue. But when Sibo mentioned something about the game he was playing, Blue told him to shut the up and stop talking about it. Blue then went into a seemingly aggressive rant about how the game Sibo was playing was objectively not fun or entertaining. When Sibo attempted to argue back, Blue interrupted him, saying that he knew he was already wrong and he didn't have to finish speaking. The screenshot shows the point when Sibo later confronted Blue in DMs to discuss the situation. He expresses that he has been belittled repeatedly by Blue and has become increasingly upset by it. He also states that he hopes that Blue can change. Blue replies by saying that that's just his style of conversation, and that Sibo needs to learn how to get used to arguments where there are interruptions and talkback. Blue continues by saying that Sibo needs to learn how to make his point in his opening statement, or else people are just going to immediately interpret it as incorrect under the assumption that anything you say after that is just fluff, which in my opinion makes Blue sound incredibly condescending. Blue finishes by blaming Sibo, stating that he's been the only person Blue knows who continually leaves calls when he's upset. Sibo then replies by calling out Blue for his poor logic regarding his ideas of what arguments are supposed to be, and then goes on to talk about how civilized arguments don't usually result in people talking over one another, citing Blue's interruptive argumentation as a reason why no one has ever tried to correct him on his flaws. Sibo explains that he left the call because he felt like being constantly interrupted wasn't a fruitful way of conducting an argument, and that he would have stayed to discuss the situation had he not been so upset. Sibo continues by saying that he has spoken to other people who know Blue and have heard that they have had similar negative experiences with him. He ends his message by stating that he would like to believe Blue doesn't have bad intentions, but wants Blue to change the way he talks to people. According to Sibo, Blue allegedly never responded to that message. Sibo says that he wanted to present this information to show that Blue's real personality is very different to his outward persona. In Blue's response to this allegation, he claims that they were all just having fun and that it was just playful banter that may have gone a little too far. He says that he didn't respond to Sibo's last DM because he didn't want to further upset or hinder his fun. Whoa, that's a lot of information, but that's everything, right? Says you in the audience. Well, allow me to ask you a counter question. What is FNF drama without some shenanigans on Twitter? Very shortly after Blue posted his response on Twitter, two very important Twitter threads arose to respond to the response. The first one was by Mike the Magician, who is connected to this whole situation as he was the voice actor of Bob in the Bob and Boosip FNF mod. The second thread was, of course, by Sibo, who came to defend himself against the allegations posed against him by Blue. The two threads interlink with one another, so I'll start by talking about Sibo's thread. Sibo explains that Blue's first point, the one about the Amor NSFW situation, is a matter of opinion and that federal law still applies no matter the justification. Sibo says Blue's statement about the minors following his NSFW alt account was an accident is also just his word. Sibo then goes on to fully debunk Blue's statement about Sibo's drunkenness. He completely counters Blue's point about Sibo being rude and sexual in the voice chats, saying that he never treated anyone in the ways Blue claimed he did, and that people usually found him super fun to talk to. He backs up this claim by linking Mike the Magician's Twitter thread, which goes very deeply into the idea that Blue is blatantly over-exaggerating Seebo's drunkenness to a slanderous degree. Seebo then says that he never said Blue initiated the sexual conversation, which is quite concerningly a lie, but seeing as the rest of the thread seems to be truthful, I'm willing to brush it off as a lapse in memory. Anyway, Seebo then calls out Blue for victim blaming and claiming that Seebo forced Blue into an uncomfortable situation. Seebo then talks about the issue of Blue taking advantage of a drunk person, a subject that I have spoken about earlier in this video. While I personally don't like the aggressiveness at which Seebo assumes Blue had CP, he does have somewhat of a point. Seebo concludes his thread by stating that Blue is trying to flip the narrative and blatantly lie about Seebo, and although Blue's response should not be ignored, there are many holes in his argument. Anyway, let's take a look at Mike the Magician's response to Blue's response. Have you gotten tired of hearing the word response yet? Mike's main point, as I've touched on previously, is that Blue was incredibly wrong about Seebo's drunkenness. Mike explains that it's legal in Seebo's home state to drink alcohol with parental consent, which I've explained before. Mike straight up denies the idea that Seebo ever yelled profanities at anyone in voice chats, though Mike also admits that he didn't join very many mod calls, so he isn't the most reliable witness. However, Mike argues that they couldn't have just been completely isolated cases of Seebo's drunken rage, and it's very unlikely for him to have just stopped with all of the bad behavior after the development of the mod, assuming that Mike and Seebo had calls after the creation of the mod. Mike heavily attacks Blue's accusation that Seebo would horny talk people in voice chats. Mike says that the people would have to tell him to chill out and then he would leave part was either highly unlikely or very untrue. Mike testifies that Amor was significantly more sexual than Seebo in voice calls, constantly calling people cute, twink, femboys or gays. Yet, there were very few times when people told Amor to chill out. Finally, Mike talks about the voice call in which Blue and Seebo got into a big argument over the game Seebo was playing. Mike states that he was present in the voice call, and gives some additional details about the situation. Amor and Seebo were playing Super Auto Pets, and claims that what Blue said to Seebo was beyond light talking, and got into a very heated rant, as opposed to the friendly banter which Blue makes it out to be. Mike also says that there were other people in the voice call who would support Mike's testimony. Mike ends the thread by reaffirming that the intent of his post was to defend Seebo's reputation from Blue's slanderous statements. Blue later replied to Seebo's Twitter thread. He apologized for victim blaming Seebo, and for making biased claims about how Seebo acted in the heated voice call. He also restates the fact that he does not possess CP, but accepts if people still don't believe him. Some hours later, Blue posted an apology. It reads, "Reading back, I did a severe amount of victim blaming and deflecting against Seebo's points while not providing solid evidence. I hold myself accountable for rushing a half-assed apology while being such a defensive asshole. I felt cornered and lashed out against his words, and that's a seriously f***ed up thing to do. I'm sorry for the defamation I put onto Seebo trying to defend myself, and I take it back. For the record, he is not an alcoholic. He is perfectly legal to be drinking at home. I shouldn't have interacted with him that way while he was drunk, and that was solely my fault and not his, considering he wasn't in the right headspace. He didn't make sexual aggressions on anyone on the call while he was drunk, and he was in the right here, and there is no excuse for me saying he did those things. My memory of the night was flawed. Don't forgive me. I simply wanted to make a response. That was federal law, and I shouldn't have brought up age of consent state laws. I'm going to talk to my college counselor to ask for help in getting me to someone who can help me think of how to improve myself going forward. I'm going to take a hiatus to figure out ways I can apologize properly to the victims of my actions. Not for forgiveness, obviously. Just to make it clear, I want to improve and I don't want to die on this hill. My PFP will remain black so people don't harass the artists showcased on my account and meme them because of my f***ed up actions. I'm going to go do college for a bit and try to become a better person." Blue at the very least seems sincere in his apology, and he does mention that he's going to find a way to apologize to his victims for his actions. Victims with a plural, meaning that in future he will probably address the things he didn't address in this apology. On the other hand, and this is just my opinion, you don't have to agree with me on this, based on the sheer extraordinary number of times Blue has done something bad and then regretted it later and apologized about it, it is entirely possible that he is simply doing this to get people off his back. It's a common strategy, when being accused of something, to just say sorry and hope people stop pestering you. and it's very plausible that this is possibly what Blue is doing. This is a theory which is backed up by SIBO's constant assertions that Blue is a manipulative person. Furthermore, and this is also entirely my opinion, the first half of the apology is simply about how he had defamed SIBO, making me think that Blue might never have made this apology had SIBO and Mike not spoken out against Blue's slanderous behaviour. Since then, Blue has interacted very little on Twitter, with his last posts being updates on his mental health journey. In conclusion, I advise that we all form our own opinions on this topic. In my opinion, Blue is most definitely guilty of many wrongdoings, but I genuinely hope he can seek the help he needs and become a better person, despite all of the mistakes he made. For SIBO and everyone else involved, I hope they've received some closure now that this information is out in the open. In the end, we can all learn a lesson from this situation. Fame on the internet, obviously, comes with increased attention placed on everything you do, especially on social media. It seems like a pretty hard thing to keep track of, and, in Blue's case, he seemed to have forgotten this lesson a long time ago. So you'd better keep your record squeaky clean, or else your misdemeanors will be exposed to the public. Thanks for sticking it out to the end of this video. If you enjoyed it, consider liking and subscribing to the channel. Trust me, it's a good time investment. And while you're down there, be sure to join my Discord server, link in the description. I don't have anything else to say, so see you in the next video.